Hello, 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 and welcome everyone to Work Reimagine, hosted by Automattic and Tech Beach in partnership with TT Unit Trust Corporation. It's an honor to have you guys with us today, and it's even a greater honor for me to have this conversation with the members of Automattic coming up, and I'll be introducing them shortly. So, just in terms of letting you understand what we're going to be unfolding today, it's going to be a two-part session, a conversation with members from the Automattic team, and we'll be exploring what it's like working in a fully remote first company. And then we'll also have some engagement questions with the audience following that. And then at 10:45, we will have our conversation on the future of work and the expectations of employers and employees as we move between office, hybrid, or fully distributed teams. Now, it's my honor again to, of course, have Cavell and Joel Dean on the panel today. And I will now take the opportunity to bring Cavell on board and have him introduce himself. Cavell, welcome.
Hey, Raquel, thanks for having me. Excited to be here. Welcome to everyone who's joining.
Thank you, Cavell. It's a pleasure to have you as well. And I know we also have your associate, Joel, on with us. So, Joel, it's a pleasure to have you with us today.
Hi, Raquel. It's a pleasure. Hey, Cavell, what's up?
What's up, boss?
All right, and guys, we are fully having this conversation with the team here, and I'm going to just allow the gentlemen to give us a quick introduction on themselves, and then we're going to go into some about Automattic and build out your questions from there. So tell me a bit about Joel. Let's start with Joel. Joel, give me some background on Joel Dean.
Hi, everyone. My name is Joel Dean. I am a senior software engineer at Automattic. I currently work on the WordPress mobile apps. So the mobile apps that are used to create websites, edit your site, set up notifications, utilize Reader. I contribute to that team. I've been working remotely for 5 years from Jamaica. So I've been able to contribute to the mobile engineering space, the US mobile engineering space, while being remotely here. And it's been an interesting journey so far that has led me to Automattic. So yeah, I'm just happy to be here to share my journey, to share my experience, and to just share how amazing it has been, working at Automattic.
And that's awesome because that's a lot of things, a lot of what people want to hear about today. For example, we do have this remote work opportunity that we're working on with Automattic and everyone. They are looking for rich talent in the Caribbean, right? Focus on design, engineering, and a few other spaces. And we're inviting persons, of course, in the comment section to just say hello, tell us where you're from, and of course, throw out questions that you may have for us regarding Automattic and the work happening there. Now, Joel talked about the experience there, and before we go into more of that, we're going to ask Cavell to give us some background on who Cavell Khan is and his role at Automattic and Tumblr. Cavell, over to you.
Thank you, Raquel. So I'm Cavell Khan. I was born and raised in Jamaica. So if there's anyone from the Montego Bay or South Lamar side of Jamaica, shout out. That's where I'm originally from. But I now live in the States, and I am the Chief Revenue Officer for Tumblr, the social media app was bought by Automattic in 2019. And I also oversee our advertising business for WordPress, which I know a lot of you are familiar with. And so it's been a really interesting experience, moving from the companies I've worked for in the past, which include Microsoft, Twitter, and Vice Media, into a tech company that is fully distributed, and what that has meant, and how that has affected the way that I work, especially as someone who sits not on the engineering side, but more so on the business side, working with clients and the teams in a distributed fashion. I'm excited to be here. Full disclosure, I'm on the advisory board for Tech Beach, and this is really personal for me, because one thing that I know growing up in Jamaica is that there's an incredible amount of talent throughout the Caribbean, but opportunity is what is limited. And I think the 21st century is going to be radically different than the 20th century, and be defined by the technology being enabling all of you who are on here to be able to, whether you're working or creating or building startups, to be able to do that into a more global market, in a way that you weren't able to do before. In the 20th century, when I was growing up in Jamaica, opportunities were limited by the geopolitical landscape and the economic landscape of Jamaica. Uh, that's no longer the case. And Automatic is probably the best company that has the track record. I think WordPress was created 18 years ago, and it's been born as a distributed company. And Joel is the best exemplar of how the future of work will be, and what work reimagined looks like. And so I hope I'm here shamelessly hiring for Automatically, and hopefully I could share some stuff about our culture and the work we're doing here that any of those of you who are in the engineering side would be able to be sort of apply. And by the way, we have folks on our HR and hiring team in the comment section. So if you do have specific questions in HR, or about hiring, they're going to be answering some of those in the comment section. So keep an eye on that also.
All right, thank you so much, Havel. And I'm also impressed by the fact that Automatic, with all of the different brands that you have under, you've thrown a couple of them out, and persons are probably picking and saying, "I know that one." Yes, really. And to see them falling under the umbrella of Automatic is absolutely awesome. And more so, having that fully remote work, over 1,800 persons across a global distribution, and the accessibility created, that Cavell mentioned, for everyone. It's not just Jamaica. We're all big on Jamaica here
Yes.
today, because
Yes.
we're all Jamaican hearted, and we're close to home. But we want to let persons know that the accessibility to global opportunities is here. It's here with Tech Beach, and it's here with Automatic. So we're hearing the name Automatic. We're seeing the brands that fall under Automatic. We're hearing that we have the HR persons on to answer questions about the opportunity coming and being presented to you guys. And we have Cavell here and Joel saying how great it is. So what exactly is Automatic? And let's start there. And I'll probably ask Cavell, since you have the longer standing thing there, tell us, give me more depth on what is Automatic, who is Automatic, and why Automatic.
Yeah, so Automatic is probably not a consumer-facing name, so you're not familiar with it, but you know the companies, and you probably have worked with a lot of the technology of Automatic. So we are and I prefer the term distributed company, and that's a term our founder, Matt Mullenweg, who is the co-inventor and inventor of WordPress, created, and started the company in that way. And so we have about 1,820 automaticians, which is what we call folks who work at the company, in 94 countries, and they speak 118 different languages. We're committed to truly building a workplace that is diverse, that is equitable, and that is inclusive, for everyone to come and do their best work. Our clear goal and what we're trying to do is to democratize publishing and commerce, so that anyone with a story can tell it, and anyone with a product can sell it, regardless of income, gender, political affiliation, language, whatever it is. Wherever you are in the world, you can use the tools and the capabilities of Automatic to be able to do that. So the consumer brands that you might be familiar with, that fall underneath Automatic, are WordPress.com. WordPress tech and technology and code powers about 40% of the internet, so it's pretty pervasive. WooCommerce is our e-commerce platform that plugs into our WordPress sites and folks who build on WordPress as their CMS. Jetpack, which is a host of different solutions that enables you to power up your site that you're building on our platform. Simple Note, long reads, Vault Press, uh, Gravatar, Crowd Signal, Tumblr, which is the division where I sit, Day One, which is a private blogging app, Pocket Cast, which is all about podcasting, which is growing, and so many more. So we have a host of brands that support us, and basically we believe in making the web a better place. And so that's what Automattic is about, and we're looking for talented people, regardless of where they are globally, to help us to do that. And Joel is one of those amazing people.
Absolutely. And I heard Joel talking about how amazing it is. And the brands you've mentioned, what I'm getting here is that there is so much diversity and inclusion around your whole ethos, right? And it's awesome. It's in every step of everything you've just said. And the opportunity you're expanding also speaks to that. So we are, if you are persons who are online with us today, we're inviting you to go check out our page and see the opportunities. It's not too late to register. It's not too late to sign up. And Joel is definitely begging us to, he's saying, come as you are. And that is definitely awesome. Don't be daunted by the fact that there's not a job description. We are now in the new century. We're now in the new way. There's been a catalyst for this. There are companies doing this for years, Automattic, and now we need other companies doing this. And if you're not doing it already, you're going to be doing it with Automattic. So as we move into the conversation, let's get Joel in. Being a part of it, having been working, he says 5 years now fully remote. Funny enough, I've been working fully remote in Jamaica for 3 years now, previously with Microsoft and now with Tech Beach, right? And Joel, let me know, how has that been like for you? But more so importantly, tell me what the culture is like at Automattic from the business standpoint to the individual brand. And I know you're specific to one, so give me a bit about the culture there.
Yeah, so one of the most amazing things about our culture is that it's very communication centric. When a lot of people hear remote, they're like, wait, so if you're not in the same building, how will you maintain that interaction? How will you talk to your coworkers? How will you have fun? How will you keep engaged and like alive each day to sign in and be ready and be ready and motivated to push with your team? Luckily, this is available with just the current technologies that we have. So what Automattic has been able to do really well is to create like a virtual work environment with all the great tools that we utilize to communicate. We really favor asynchronous communication. So that's asynchronous communication basically allows us to express ourselves using, we have an internal blog called P2. So, for example, if you have a thought or idea, instead of, because you can't walk over to an office, you would write a P2 post and it would be published to the entire company. We utilize Slack for asynchronous communication. So if you want to send messages to your coworkers, you log into Slack, and when you want some face-to-face connectivity, you can use Zoom or Google Meet. And when it comes to like work for engineers, we have GitHub where we'll create our pull requests and send in code and have discussions. So basically, like, we are utilizing all of those tools, but those tools are basically empowering the core of the culture, which is everyone is working from their own space. Everyone has their own schedule, and you are able to work in an autonomous way where you have freedom to be who you are, be flexible, but still be connected to the same goal and the same vision, which is to democratize publishing.
And I love that. And Cavell may have something to add to that. But before we go there, it's kind of important, as you talked about, um, getting the work done and
Yeah.
all of that with the collaboration tools and the end of the day and
Mhm.
meeting those targets. Accountability is important, right? And the
Yes.
autonomy that we gain with creating our own schedules and still delivering on deliverables is important in a tech and in a fully enabled space. So before we dive to the next question, let's build that out a bit. What is that accountability set like? What is the mindset and the psychology required to be in fully remote work. I mean, the fun part, the work part, the my bed is right beside me. I could go
Yeah.
and just,
Yeah.
how do we navigate those with the demands on the road and knowing that we can do our personal time as we will? What does the responsibility and accountability culture look like for us individually?
Yeah, I can take that, and Joel can talk to it from an engineering standpoint. But in general, across all the different divisions, there are going to be specific um, objectives or key results or business objectives that we need to achieve. So just because the company is distributed and you're working from different locations doesn't mean that there aren't very clear goals that we're trying to achieve, that there aren't very clear projects that need to be delivered on, and that there aren't timelines and deliverables that are
Yeah.
going to make sure that the work is tracking in a way that it will. And what's helpful for that is what Joel talked about, which is we use our own internal capabilities, our own WordPress blogs into what we call P2 to ensure that everything that's being done is documented. And so it's
Yeah.
there's no hiding. It's
Mhm.
actually easier to hide in a traditional company
Right?
if you're slacking off than in a distributed company.
Yeah.
Because in a distributed company, all your work is being posted, and there's an expectation that you are writing and showing the work that you're being done. So it's very easy. Myself as a people manager, and I run a very uh, a sizable organization. Um, I can see every meeting that has taken place on my team. I could see every project. I understand what the latest updates are. And I can do that if I so choose at 9 o'clock at night when everyone is having dinner with their family and if they're on the East Coast. And I can still consume that if that's what works well for me. And so that's where asynchronous communication is really cool because you can work on your own time, even though there's very clear deadlines. And whoever needs to read it, check it, requires that information, doesn't need you to be up and awake for them to access the work that you need. And so if there's a dependency piece of work, one person can do that work whenever it's best for them, as long as they're beating the deadline. And then the next person who needs that dependency can pick that up when it works best for them. And that's where a huge value of distributed work comes into play. One
I
thing I
Yeah.
do want to make
Yeah,
clear,
sure. Go ahead.
I want to add in here also because I know we use these terms remote work and distributed and they mean different things.
Yes.
A
Yeah.
distributed company doesn't mean that you're never getting together in person with your coworkers. Prior to the conditions of the pandemic, what made a distributed company like Automattic work so effectively is that there was time for what we call meetups. And
Yeah.
so teams, when they do need to collaborate in a room in person together, and they do need to build camaraderie and culture and go
Yeah.
have,
Yep.
do an event together,
Yep.
there is the budget and the access to be able to hold meetups as whether in small groups, whether locally. We have so many different divisions here, and you want to get to know different folks. So I sit in New York. You know, Prior to COVID, there were New York meetups, and they're starting to happen again now that vaccinations are
Yes.
happening. And Joel has brought a bunch of people from Jamaica with him to Automatic, which is awesome. And I'm sure Joel is going to be setting up some meetups down there
Yeah.
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 for
Yeah. Yeah.
folks.
Yeah.
And Joel, you should invite some of the people here to come along
Yeah.
when you do the next one. So I just want to add in as part of the culture question that accountability is clear, but also part of building the culture doesn't mean you're only working from home or only working remotely. There are opportunities to meet with your team to do work together, and some projects may require getting in a room together in person for a few days, and that also takes place within a distributed company.
Yeah.
Yes. And guys, it's important to just highlight again, distributed does not necessarily mean fully remote. That's key. And also collaboration and that chain of dependency is important.
Mhm.
Milestones and project management is core in what we do right now, and collaboration beyond the work is important. Face to face is still possible now that the, I would say, borders are opening and vaccination numbers are rising. We're going to be able to see each other again and touch each other again in a safe way, 6 feet apart, boom, office and thing, we're good.
Yeah.
um yeah, so thanks, gentlemen. I don't know, I think we've touched on the culture bits. I think if there are any questions in the comment section from the audience, if you have any questions that you want to find out the response from the gentleman, feel free to shoot those over to us. All right. And we're going to go into the next question for the team, which kind of brings us into more of a deep seated understanding of the what we were talking about with the remote part of this, the remote environment. What is it like to work in an operate in a totally remote environment? What does it take? And we kind of started touching on that, but is there anything else we need to hammer home or drive home or make a
Yeah.
point on? Please go
Yeah.
ahead, Joel.
Yeah. So I think one of the things that we want to like we could put some emphasis on is even though there's a lot of flexibility, you still have to really organize your day. So speaking from like a personal experience, Automatic does not track your time. Like you don't need to have a timer where you are running that timer and saying that you're
There
working
is
eight
no
hours per day.
micromanagement.
Yeah, but that means you have to manage yourself since you're not being micromanaged. So personally, I have a schedule that I work with each day where I get up at say for around 8 a.m. I hit the gym. So I get my biceps strong and ready and
I
ready
love
to,
it.
get myself pumped in that frame of mind because one of the scariest things that happens to a lot of folks is you get up and the first thing you're glued to your phone, you see a notification from a coworker that you probably didn't push something as yet, or you need to fix this test or respond to something, and you could get all flustered. But just taking like an hour to get into a mindful state is like really important in a remote environment. So once I'm in that mindful state, I then declutter. So I'm like, okay, all my thoughts, I dump that into some notes and I start to organize my day. I look at Slack, I look at the P2 post as Cavell has mentioned, and I just start to get an idea of like, what do I need to do today? How much focused work will I need to do? So how much time will I need to block out before I go on the road to go to a cafe or something? Because one of the things you have to be mindful of is with freedom comes great
Responsibility.
responsibility.
Absolutely.
And because you are not being micromanaged and your teammates are all across various time zones, you have to keep that in mind as you're planning your day. So
Hmm.
it's basically a mixture between a lot of structure, but it's still a bit unstructured. But when it comes together, it creates a really amazing experience. I would
Beautiful
like to
tale.
say, yeah, I'd like to say a proper separation of concerns is important in terms of just work life balance. So, work life balance is really important because, for example, I don't work in my living room, I don't work in my bedroom. From a psychological perspective, you have to have proper separation, else you will just be working endlessly. So I keep work in my office, and once I close the door, if I need to use my computer, I plug the laptop from the monitor and I come to the living room. I'm like, okay, this is family time. I'm talking with my son, I'm talking with my wife, and
Hmm.
I'm disconnected. So I think that's the formula. Being able to do really good work and enjoy life at the same time, and
Hmm.
bringing both of those together is what I think makes Automatic so special, because you can be fulfilled in a holistic manner.
And that's very important for a lot of persons now in this environment that we're having, right? Whether it's personal time and that involves family or friends, whatever construct that formulates, right? Background noise, you know how it is in Jamaica.
Yeah,
That's the
yeah.
yin yang
Yeah,
them
man.
or the yang yang them. Sorry guys, I had to just throw that out
Yeah.
there. Right? But it's very important for us to understand that sometimes it won't be balanced because right we can't find 50-50 and 70-30 and all of those things, but it's how we navigate and weave them together, right? And the fact that a company like Automatic honors the fact and respects the fact that our family is important to us and they play a big part in how we impact and affect at work, right? But you
Yeah.
also mentioned Joelle, that I thought was important too, the pre-plan, the pre-game to entering your day, that
Yeah.
mindset, that flow state, and all of those
Yeah.
important things. Um, some of the mornings you'll pick up your phone and what you would have maybe set even for the night before as your today is basically navigated away because of the urgencies that come up or the emergencies and the fires that are started, and then your day gets a bit carried away.
Yeah.
So we want to navigate that, and these are the elements we want to consider in whether distributed remote work or work from home or a combination of the many, right? And Automatic persons online, we're being told today that They afford you the ability to carve and shape your day. However, the value and the mission and the goal, as Cavell mentioned, the deliverables have to be delivered like Pizza Hut, right? Can't miss that. So, as we move along, we have a couple of other conversation points we want to have. And Cavell kind of alluded to that. How the meetups or the collaboration efforts, the virtuals, how do employees get to know each other and build that rapport and that synergy between each other beyond the work structure? Tell me, how does that work for Automatic? What does that look like with so many different presses and work? Tell me, how does that work with all of the
Yeah,
umbrellas?
for sure. I can jump in there, and Joel, if you want to add, definitely add in. I think we have to separate this question into two, because the the world with COVID is a little bit different than without COVID, what that looks like. And so in a COVID world, we're losing some of the meetups as much as we need to, but leveraging written communication is a big part of it. And I think Joel mentioned Slack. There are a number of groups focused around interests and other areas that we have within Slack, so that you can get to know other folks within the organization in a different way that's non-work related, right? So, for example, I am vegetarian. There's a Slack group called Veganomatic that I'm always in there, and there's so many good recipes in there that I pull and use and make for dinner. And you talk to folks in there, and you get to build that rapport. And sometimes there's different things that we do, such as Zoom calls or whatever, as part of that. And so that's one way that you can get to know folks in a different way. Slack and other things that we do within the organization, we have non-work related learning and development and just general events that we do here as a company to bring people in and bring people together to discuss things that are aligned around their interests and things that are important to them. So, for example, we will bring authors in and do a Zoom call and talk about that around various types of topics that are important. There will be sessions depending on what Slack group you belong to. Those groups sometimes have meetings to get together where everyone jumps on and they talk about, man, what's going on in your day, what's happening here and there, and you have more casual conversation.
Yeah.
Slack has a feature or a plugin called Donut. I don't know if those familiar with Slack know it.
Mhm.
I participate in a number of donuts, which will just automatically set up 1-to-1 or 1-to-2 or 3, or depending on you set the parameters, just random 30-minute catch-ups that are not work related for you to get to meet folks that you wouldn't meet normally on a day-to-day basis. And so people participate in that so that they can get, because you're not walking past someone in the office and getting to do small talk with them.
Right?
Donut
There's no
enables that
cool
in a
talk.
distributed, yeah, in a distributed way. So those are some of the ways that since I've been here, I've leveraged to get to know a lot of my fellow coworkers. Um, in a non-distributed work, it really is leveraging the meetups. It really is leveraging whether it's local meetups, whether it's meetups
Yeah.
around interest groups, setting those things up, and very often using that as a way to get to know people that may not sit in your division or that you don't work with on a day-to-day basis.
Absolutely. And it's good I like the fact that you've mentioned donut. I kind of call it a kind of a round robin of sorts, right? A
Yeah.
network
Yeah,
round robin, because we get lost in our day to day, forgetting that we may have core team members that we engage with and it's all work, but then there's the other side, and it could still be somewhat work related, but not as structured, or as you said, a more casual conversation, a catch up, and that's needed. I like the virtual feel. Tell me, Joel, based on what Cavill has said, the model in the COVID phase times, and I'm sure when COVID is not present or less of an issue, will kind of transition back to how it used to be or even better. But how has it been for you? I would say tapping into the channels that Cavell has mentioned, with engaging and building rapport and getting to know the ones that you're not physically seeing or
Yeah.
touching.
Yeah, so I wanted to touch on two things before touching on how it has been. I
Sure.
I still want to emphasize how amazing it will be once we are doing more meetups and
Face
going
to
back to
face.
that traditional model. Um,
Absolutely.
one of the best experiences I've had in my career was when I just got hired to Automatic and I was able to go to the meetup. So this is what happened. I got an offer letter on Friday. The meetup is starting on Tuesday. So I'm like freaking out because I'm like, wow, this is the opportunity of a lifetime. I can go to
Wow.
Miami for free, all expenses paid, and I've never traveled for free, you know. So I message HR and I'm like, will I be able to come to the meetup? And on Sunday, I get a response and they're like, do you have a US visa? And I'm like, yes. And I'm like, oh, so will it be possible? And I'm thinking, oh, it's not going to be possible. It's so short notice. Instantly, I get a response and they're like, okay, we're booking the ticket now. And I'm like, what? So the ticket is booked on Sunday. So on Monday, my life is changed because Friday, I wasn't sure if I had passed the trial. And on Monday, I'm on a plane to Miami. I get
Hmm.
to Miami and there is a bus to pick me up with the automatic sign. I go into
First
that
class.
bus. And when I get to Hilton Hotel, that's when my mind is blown. I look up and the Hilton sign is not on the hotel; it's an automatic sign. And I'm like, no way, this is too next level. So I go into the hotel, and the entire hotel is themed out in automatic logos. There are
Wow.
possibly almost 1,000 people at the hotel. They booked out an entire hotel. So
Wow.
I'm at the event and we're meeting people and I see the CEO, I see Matt, and in my heart I'm like, wow, I'd really want to take a picture with the CEO, but he's the CEO, he's all the way up there. I just joined a day ago. And then just listening to him talk, I'm like, wow, this guy is pretty cool and chilling down to earth.
Rude.
So I walked up to him and I was like, Matt, could I get a picture? I just started, and he's like, okay, how long have you been here? And I was like, 2 days. And he started laughing and he was like, sure. And I took a picture and I was like, wow, I was just really happy to feel accepted and to just feel at home even in
Welcomed.
less than a week. And I've always wanted to go to Disneyland, and from I was a child, and they actually booked out half of Disneyland for us,
Oh
unlimited
wow. No,
rides.
I'm
So
coming to work at Automatic. I am fully
I
officially
went on the roller
yes.
coaster about 6 times, you know. So it's
That's
really,
awesome.
yeah, it's like when we come together, we really celebrate. We have dinners, we have talks, we have chats. It's
Absolutely.
a culture of like people from all over the world speaking multiple languages,
Yep.
different perspectives that you
Yep.
can really get to see the world from a different angle. And that's the distributed work environment for me. Having separated time where at home I'm focused and I'm able to live my life while contributing to a great organization, but then having these amazing intervals where we're able to come together and share. And that's what we have been doing now, is just transitioning into it virtually, where we're
Hmm.
doing donut chats and these meetups, virtual meetups as well. There was a time we did a virtual meetup where we cooked together, like my team, we cooked together. So we set up
Potluck
our
kind of thing.
cameras and we were cooking food and giving home tours
Oh,
just
nice.
to just share our space. No pressure. You turn the camera on or off if you want, but just to bring that kind of physical element into the virtual environment. So yeah, that's what my experience has been like
No,
so far.
that sounds like an absolutely sublime experience. I'm a little bit, no, I won't use the word jealous because jealousy is never a good look, right? But Cavell, I think I'm going to have to put in a good word for myself. No, but for me, the culture there alone, and for persons who are exploring the job opportunities created here, it's telling you that you may not know exactly what the steps are, but I can tell you that you don't need to worry. Not seem, they are structured, they are process driven, they are timely, they are respectful, they're honoring you, and you're getting first class treatment. And they understand that branding is important, but it's more than branding, but being present and having you feel welcomed and included. I mean, Matt is happy to take pictures. You are being picked up personally, but that's not the key of it. The key of it is the culture from the beginning of your journey while you're there, and I think to the end of wherever you should go next. I'm seeing this as a wonderful experience with the Automatic team, and I invite you all to put your bids in to get on that. Now we are a couple of minutes in,
Raquel,
and
can
yeah,
I
sure,
jump in on that pitch also?
yes, please pitch.
Yeah. No, I love it, and maybe some folks joined a little bit late and didn't hear when I touched on this in the beginning. But what Joe's experience is exactly what I'm talking about. Let's be real. We're a family here. We're all from, this is targeted to the Caribbean. I am from Jamaica. And I understand the socioeconomics of
Yeah.
Jamaica and the Caribbean. Distributed work, companies like Automatic, is going to allow you to level up. Let's keep it real. We don't exist in the world. Our purpose of our life is not just to work, right? We work to live. We don't live to work. And let's be clear about that. The expectation is to deliver the results, but we don't live to work. We work to live so we can provide for ourselves. My story, I'm not saying this applies to everyone. My story is I had very humble beginnings growing up in Jamaica, and what uh, my journey has allowed me to do. And I'm gonna put Joel on blast a little bit here, because you hear Joel talk about, oh, I work in my office. What Joel don't tell you is that he has a sauna in his office also. What Joel isn't telling you is, and I'm gonna put him on blast. Joel, I won't say what kind, but Joel drives a Porsche. Now, if you know anything about Jamaica and how things work, to to basically have a car in Jamaica that's an imported car, you basically have to be able to buy the car twice. That's how the
Yeah,
taxes
that's true.
work.
Amen. At least you know. You remember.
So let's keep it real.
Yeah.
I love the company I work for. We're here, but we see Automatic as an amazing company, but distributed work in general, and companies who are following the path of distributed work, is going to represent for the Caribbean region in the 21st century a way for you to expand and grow and have economic improvement and move up the economic ladder to provide for your family, your community, and others in a way that was not allowed prior to the invention of all the technology that exists today. And more, the pandemic just hyperspeed the
Yeah.
realization for companies
Fast track.
that, oh
Most
Absolutely.
snap,
definitely.
the old model doesn't need to be the current model. No one challenged it because they didn't need to.
Oh,
And now that COVID created the environment where that model is challenged, believe me, every CFO is looking and saying, what are my two biggest cost line items? Number
Mm.
one is
absolutely.
employee cost. Number two is infrastructure. You know,
Correct.
all these
Your overheads.
offices that
Hmm.
places have,
The
all
brick
over the
and
world,
mortar.
exactly, is not always necessary. It's
No.
not always necessary, and it expands. So one of the benefits I get is I hire people from all over. I have folks working in Israel. I have folks working in London. I have folks working all over the place, and I get to go after talent, not
Yeah.
region. So I hire talent. I don't hire based on where you sit, where you live, any of that stuff. If you are talented, then I want to talk to you. My team wants to talk to you, and that's what we look at. And so your job, for those who are seeking employment and seeking opportunities, is making sure that you are representing yourself in the right, that your resume is ready. And by the way, we're not going anywhere. So even if you don't have the experience we need today, and you might not get a response from, you submit your application and maybe you don't get the response, because we do get a lot of applications because people recognize the opportunity.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that another role isn't going to open up, or that when you have done something for another year, maybe you don't have enough experience, that you can't reapply, and then that will be the opportunity for you to join our company. So don't get discouraged by that. But really, again, the pitch here and why I believe in this and why I'm on the advisory board for Tech Beach is the 21st century can be a vastly different century for the Caribbean region, and we're no longer limited by the job opportunities that our governments and our politicians can create, because companies recognize that they have a global audience, they have global consumers, and they want a global workforce to be able to develop for that.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
again, I have to give that pitch here towards the end, but that's why I'm here, and that's why Joel and I want to show you. So seeing is
Yeah.
believing, right? That's what we say.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
so you can
Most
see that it
def.
is possible. And Joel is being humble. I think since Joel has joined, he's probably brought about 3 or 4 people who
Yeah.
he's engaged with to join the company, and they put in the work, right? They didn't
Yep.
just.
Yeah.
It's not because they know Joel. It's
No.
because they
Yeah.
put in the work.
Yep.
And that's the part of the accountability that is never going to go away. Whether it's a traditional company or a distributed company, you have to be the right talent, and you got to put in the work to
Yeah.
be able to get in and be successful.
Absolutely. And there's so much I could grab from that, but we're pressed for time. And I want to kind of take what you just said and ask a ceiling question for me. What skills or approach does it take from one to thrive as an automatic? right? Like, what do I need to come with? You told me to make my resume good, but what do I need to put on that? What do I need to make sure was there? And you said also that, there's time to come. So if it's not now, in the future, tell us what we need to be ready for Automatic and
Yeah,
thriving.
I'll touch on a couple things, and I know Joel will have definitely some other things. I would say from a get ready perspective, the job description is the job description, and what we look for is, there are functional skill sets that may be necessary based on the types of role that you're looking for. And I know this is primarily an engineering and tech audience that we're speaking to, but I'm non-tech, and there are plenty of non-tech roles that are also available, so that shouldn't be a limit. So the functional skill set may be necessary depending on the seniority of the role that's needed. Transferable skills, right? So you've heard us talk about different things as we've gone through this conversation. And so your ability to demonstrate how you self-manage, your ability to demonstrate how you operate on your own to be able to deliver against a specific goal, your ability to demonstrate that you know how to communicate with a team in an effective way in achieving goals. There's a lot of skill sets that are transferable skill sets that we look for to ensure that people are going to fit within the culture and the way we work, which is different. The way we work is different, and so that's a lot of what it takes. When I talk about sort of getting in and what
Mhm.
you need to show on your resume, and some roles may require that you have very specific experience, right? If you're an engineer and you're an iOS engineer, you have to have the skill sets to be able to code as an iOS engineer. If you're, Android, you have to be able to code Android. So those skills are absolutely necessary to be successful. Once you're in the company, requires you to be self-motivated. It requires you to have a mindset of, we have a creed, and you should check out the Automatic creed that starts with, like, we're all learners. We're all here to
Yeah.
learn, and it's not about, we're not a culture where it's like, this is my job. If something needs to be done and you see it needs to be done, no one's going
Yeah.
to be telling you, hey, go do this. You should see it, you should highlight it, and then you should put a plan against, hey, is this something that I can go accomplish for the company, and then go do it. That
Mhm.
is how we are successful as a company, is that everyone in the company has that mindset. They're not sitting and waiting for someone to tell them what to do. They are self-learners. They're looking at what we need to do. They're focusing on our overall goals and building solutions based on their functional role that helps to drive towards that. And that's really what it takes. Organizational skill is also key. And this, it's very easy. I think you mentioned, Raquel, well, my bed is right there. I could just go sleep for 4 hours. Yeah, you can do that. And in about
But
6 months, you probably won't be working here
having
because
a job.
you didn't do what you needed to do. But
Yeah.
if you're this amazing sleep and you can get your job done in 2 hours and then sleep for 6 hours, no one's going to tell you not to do that. Like,
Mhm.
what we would say is, when you do that piece, go look to see what else can be done and go maximize that. But if you just want to be an average person and go to sleep, you could do that. We don't, that's not what you need to do.
Mhm.
But the point is that you have to have really good organizational skill sets
Yeah.
to be able to be successful in the company. Joel, I don't know if you want to
Okay.
add into some of that.
Yeah, I think I just wanted to add a bit about communication. I know that sometimes when we mention communication, it might seem, oh, yeah, just communicate. But when it comes on to being successful in the remote work environment, I would say one of the things that we have to ensure is just asking questions, not being afraid to ask questions. And that that skill will be leveraged throughout the interview process directly into the job. So how open are you to feedback? How are you with like asking questions of verifying that you understand or don't understand something? Conflict resolution, because conflict resolution isn't that, it doesn't mean there is an argument. It just means there is a difference in
Needs to be
opinion or
resolved.
views. So
Perspective.
that perspective, like what happens when someone wants you to go in a direction that you don't want to, how do you handle that? So it's just like having emotional awareness, a sense of emotional awareness and just self-awareness, because in the remote space you have to be inferring these things from multiple channels and like
Absolutely.
building a holistic conclusive view before you make decisions. So it's
Absolutely.
basically the skill set, it's like cross-functional. It's touching on your career and your functional skills, but just overall on your psychological profile and just how you operate in the space.
Yeah.
And to top that off, like one of one of the interesting things about Automattic is just how it supports the maintenance of your psychological state of being. I'm able to see a psychologist twice per month, based on a benefit that Automattic has provided, just to like share how I'm feeling about work, about life. I have a meditation app that's also covered by a budget. There is a co-working budget, so I get to go to co-working spaces and to Starbucks and buy a coffee on Automatic tab. So it's like the environment basically supports you expressing yourself through your skills. But as Cavell rightfully said, you basically work to live. You don't live to work.
I love it. So Cavill said level up. We heard
Yeah.
EI defined, like he basically
Yeah.
just walked us through emotional intelligence, right? Which is a key behind all of this. We heard communication and how we resolve our conflicts or come to resolutions around different perspectives. And Cavill talked about the soft skills, the transferable skills, which are important. I want to highlight on one thing that came out of a conversation we were having. Persons will see themselves in and looking on these work opportunities with Automattic and seeing the skill sets required, and they'll think, no, I'm coming from this space, maybe not. Transferable skills are a real thing. There is a
Yeah.
term called switching where you can translate those skills, the industry insights you bring, the experience you bring, the know-how, it can be applied, and it can be applied in a very rich and valuable way. So do not limit yourselves. We've hit on a couple of things here, and I don't want to take up too much of the time of the next session starting now, and Cavell will be a part of that. So Cavell, you have more room to bring up more good things about Automattic, the good thing them. And Joel, you've been awesome. You've sold me on Automattic. I'm still, I'm just like, you are in a perfect place. I like the fact that this is going to give people the opportunity to level up. Jamaicans, Bajan, everybody, we need you to just go in, find the links, message me, message Kyle, message Cavell. We're all here to give you clarity. The questions happening in the chat. If you have any questions for us, feel free to reach out. I'm going to take the opportunity to say, if there are any questions that come up, I'm not seeing them coming to us, so we're handling them in the chat. I'm going to say thank you to Joel. It was an honor and a pleasure talking to you.
It's great
You make me
chatting,
really
Cavell.
want to, think about some things, but I'm not going to go there.
Most
No, I'm going to call Cavell. And Cavell, it was an honor hearing from you as well on a lot of what is going to come for the next century and what's happening and what companies need to do to get on that path, right? The catalyst that COVID has become and what you guys have been. So thank you again so much. And
Thank you, Raquel. And thanks for everyone for listening.
All right, everyone, thank you. So pleasure. I am going to now say goodbye, and I'm also going to say hello to Kyle Maloney, our co-founder, who will be our host for the second half of our conversation today. Kyle, are you here?
Yeah, I'm here.
Awesome.
Yeah, great job, Raquel. Excellent job. Where I'm so honored that you did such an amazing job on hosting these guys. It was definitely a pleasure to see the conversation flow in that way. Cavell and Joel, make me forget for a second that I'm an entrepreneur and I'm about creating jobs, and I was considering looking to apply. I'm like, wait. This is not what I do. I don't need to apply. I had people on the side messaging me. They're like, man, listen, I'm ready to quit my job. So you guys did a phenomenal job. You have people ready to come work for Automattic. If that was the objective was definitely achieved. All right. So definitely good job to you guys on that first session. I think we did such a really good job on this. We definitely need to create some cadence where we can do this on a regular basis, beginning to see some pipeline coming through the Caribbean and getting some of our most promising and best talent so that some lives are changed and some people can really tell that Disney story like Joel, right? Yeah. So without further ado, we'll transition to a conversation that really kind of looks at the industry from an overall perspective and understanding of how the workforce is being transformed as we begin thinking about our teams fully remote and distributed. Our teams is it hybrid? Do we come back on premises? What do we do? And the decisions are being made actively today as we face what is going on with the pandemic, right? As we feel like we've gotten over one wave, there's something new that's coming down the line. And the reality is that it's very likely to continue along this train for some time to come. And so we want to engage a discussion with three people that I think are leading the charge, two globally and one within the region, on how they think about teams, how they think about the distribution of the teams, and an employee just happiness. And so how we can get people to be as happy as Joel is in Automattic, right? So I have three amazing people. I want to bring back onto our stage Cavell Khan. Excellent. Say hello again, Cavell.
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me back.
All right. Excellent. Next up, we want to bring on Rachel. All right.
Ready? Thanks for having me, Kyle.
All right. And next up, I want to bring on my friend, Dr. Carrie-Ann.
Hi, everyone, or should I say, what's going on?
All right. So I'll allow you guys to introduce yourselves. I guess we know quite a bit about Cavell already. We start with Rach. Go ahead.
Hi, everybody. Thanks again for having me, Kyle. Really a pleasure to be here. I'm head of consumer app services at WeWork. And yeah, just excited to have this conversation with you all.
All right. Dr. Hepburn.
Okay, sir.
Hepburn Malcolm.
Okay, I'm Carrie-Ann Hepburn Malcolm. I'm the Vice President, Sales and Service at the Trinidad and Tobago Unit Trust Corporation. I feel like a regional baby because even though I'm Jamaican by birth and I grew up in Jamaica, I've spent 10 years of my life in Trinidad and Tobago working in the banking and finance industry, but also, I wear another hat where I get to dabble in, connecting companies with Caribbean talent. So I'm really excited to, delve into this juicy conversation.
Yeah, excellent. We're happy to have you guys. So, when people think about their workforce and working from home or working from anywhere, they tend to get really excited at that prospect, right? And so there's a lot of technologies that's come on stream over the last few years that's enable us to be able to have such a more smooth transition. So the likes of Slack, having our calendars synced in this way. But I want to hear about some of the challenges that we face that people don't necessarily consider when they're deciding to or getting so excited about being remote. Cavell, I think you could start with us as Automattic is remote first. So tell us some of the challenges that we experience or we could expect.
Yeah, I mean, you can break it down into a few different categories. I say, one is there are technology challenges, right? Like technology is an enabler, but it is not everything, and it still can't do everything that needs to be done to fully replicate an in-person experience. But it is, as our company has demonstrated, the technology is there to allow us to be able to actually build thriving companies for it. So I think there's some parts of technology. I will say this specifically to the Caribbean, is that, if you look at something as simple as bandwidth, right? Like, what is the bandwidth to allow you to fully engage and stream? I can't tell you. I was in Jamaica a couple of weeks ago and trying to do a couple of things and stream on a Zoom and running into some glitchiness and some, the upload speed and download speed can be a challenge to distributed work depending on where you are located. And so, I think the regions have recognized that and they're working on that, and we're seeing 5G technologies being rolled out at a fast pace in the Caribbean. So that's going to be solved. But that's one level of challenge. Two is communication. And so most distributed companies are highly dependent on written communication as the form of communication that is the best. And what happens with that is when you have written communication and asynchronous communication, the person who is writing may not provide every single detail that is sometimes needed for another person who is a partner or a dependent on that information. And so it can create sometimes delays in the speed of which you can work versus someone presenting something in person, or you're having a meeting and you can immediately ask your rapid fire question. Now there's Zoom calls and all of that to allow for that. But again, remember, in distributed companies, you're not always working on the same time zone. And so the team in Asia could be working on, let's just use tech and coding as a example. The team in Asia could be working on a project and they've coded certain things. And when they are deep in the sleep is when the team in New York or the team in LA is looking at it. And, they probably have to wait a little bit if there's some questions there that they need to ask if something wasn't done correctly. Now, there's a lot of ways that we're solving for this, but those are two areas that I see that there's some challenges, is that how you communicate in the distributed world can sometimes not be as easy as when it's just face to face and in person and in real time. And then the technology itself, yeah, there's still room for growth where the technology doesn't always, all the tools are great, but it doesn't always replicate in person experience in the same way.
Yeah, perfect. Those are spot on. Those are definitely the experiences that we face on a regular basis. Rachel, given your experience previously working working currently at WeWork, previously working at a number of tech companies, tell me from your experience, what are some of the challenges that you've seen or and faced as well?
Yeah, I think there are sort of two things that really stand out to me in my mind. I think what's come with, some of what we've experienced over the last year and a half is that it's very easy to focus in on just getting the work done, right? And so beyond, separating work from leisure, I think, it's very easy to sort of get to your laptop or your large and just get to work and not find the time to actually connect with people, build the rapport that you need in order to build trust with your team, and just have fun, right, outside of work, all of these being things that you can leverage to actually achieve the goals of the company. And so that would be one area that I think we've sort of, I think some companies have done an amazing job of paying attention to that, and making sure that that is not something that you lose culturally, but others struggle with that, right? And it is left to sort of middle managers and team leads to sort of figure out, how to make sure that there's that balance of work and play on teams in order to harness proper culture that ultimately is, beneficial to companies, right? So that's one area. I think the other is that when you sort of extend that a little bit, I think what becomes clear is that within companies, particularly global companies, you sort of start to have subcultures, which may not necessarily be beneficial to the company globally, right? So I think in order to create something consistent across a company, and the larger the company, the bigger the challenge. People have to sort of become more innovative and creative about how you create a consistent experience. And we can talk a little bit more about how to do that later in the conversation. But those are two things for me that are newer and have panned out, I think, over the last year and a half or so.
Yeah, definitely. I think that aspect of driving company culture where you're not in person, for me, has been one of the challenges, right? Like, how do we create that vibe, that energy, such that the interactions aren't fully transactional, when you book a time for somebody 10 o'clock to 11 o'clock, you expect get there 10 o'clock, tell me what my action items are, and then you're done, like, so there's an opportunity for rapport to build and really to understand people's context. And context is really important when you're engaging with people, because at the end of the day, like, we're not robots. Like, we come into an interaction and we may be stressed from whatever personal situations that may have occurred in our lives, and we're all human and we understand this, and we're able to better cater for it when we're in person and say, listen, let me not go too hard on Cavell today because X reasons, wife, kids, mom, whatever, like millions of reasons. And so let me not ask this question or not engage in this way, or whatever the case is that we can cater for. But when you don't have that context coming in, it's like bam, 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 bam. And then sometimes you might get an off response. You not understand why you're getting an off response or off tone or whatever the case is. And the reality is that life is happening outside of your singular 1 hour window, And so I think one thing that we need to cater for as leaders in organizations is this other aspect of Joel mentioned last session of understanding, I guess, what I interpreted what he was saying is more of emotional intelligence and helping people to really understand the psychology of what is happening, that is different from the context of what they may be accustomed to. And so the mindset that goes into engaging with a remote team, you need to be going in a little bit thinking, okay, what is this person? What is their context prior coming in so that you can be thoughtful in your interactions, because at the end of the day, we're all people and not robots trying to achieve an objective, you know? And so I think that that's really important. I think it's important that our human resource leaders think about these things in this way. When I moved to Cariana, Dr. Hepburn, you can tell me
It's
how
like the
best.
name's tiny up. Carry on is fine, Kyle.
Yeah. Right. So tell me, I'm familiar with the fact that some of your thesis work is around organizations and people. Let's delve a bit into how you think we can cater for some of these things as we're operating in this. I think UTC operates a bit of largely on premises, but a bit of hybrid, right? And so how do you think we can cater for some of these contexts that I was mentioning just now?
Okay, all right. So as you brought up unit trust, Kyle, I think unit trust is an ideal case study because we had to move from conventional everybody in office every day. We didn't really have a work from home policy, or a true remote working policy. And obviously, the pandemic forced us to in some instances when there was a lockdown, only bring out essential staff, which were essentially the people who worked in the branches or security, while most of the staff had to work from home. And so I think organizations like ours have made such a big shift in a short space of time, albeit it was forced. And now we have to think about what will life look like going forward. There, I don't think there will be no going back to what we knew as normal. There will be a brand new normal. We've had to think about how do we now cater to what employees have grown accustomed to versus what what expectations will be going forward. So I saw an article that spoke about the fact that countries like the US and some parts of Europe are going through what they call the Great Resignation. I don't know if many people are familiar with that, but basically, it shows us how empowered employees have become because now they've tasted and know what it is like to work from home or to have a greater level of flexibility. And I don't think that most employees are willing to go back to what happened pre-pandemic, which is come to office 9 to 5, do your work at your desk. I don't think that's gonna fly. And so to bring it back to our context, we are already thinking about a number of hybrid work possibilities, and that's what's happening right now. And we realized that we were always very people centric, but more so now. It means that in the same way that a person's development plan is something that is personal, work arrangements to some extent will end up having to be quite personal depending on your circumstances. I think just to bring it together, that's how I see us fitting into this new paradigm. And you made reference to my thesis. So one of the things that statistics have said is that actually women have been significantly impacted by this paradigm shift. So you had more resignations by more females than males. You also had women actually feeling more stressed and burnt out from working at home, especially if they were juggling multiple roles. So if you have the lion's share of the domestic responsibilities, if you have children, if you have to be overseeing homeschooling. In some contexts, women have been negatively impacted. And working from home and homeschooling might not be ideal for them. And so again, that's why I said it will end up having to be somewhat of a tailored, personalized look at how the best way to engage a workforce given the different circumstances, depending on the country you live on and depending on the demands and the requirements of the organization you work in.
Can I jump in on that, Kyle?
Yeah, man, go ahead.
Thank you. I think I'm not sure how
Carry
to
on.
call it. Carrie Ann was so correct. You know, when you have the doctor in front of you, Carrie Ann, it's like, you know, you get that
Confuse
respect.
everybody. I'm
What's
gonna
up,
drop
Joey?
it.
But by the way, I love hearing the Jamaican and Trinidad accent come out. You know, it's like you have a bit of both in there, which is so fun. Um, that piece is so key. And so, Automatic being a distributed company for, you know, since the beginning, and you know, we've been at this for longer than probably anyone. Organizations are trying to discover what we already know, and there's four levels to distributed company and what that looks like. And I won't go through them here, but I'd encourage you all to look up Matt Mullenweg, who's our founder, and some of the videos and talks and podcasts that he's put out there on it, because you, especially business leaders, should really listen to it, because it will give you the cheat codes for how to do this right, instead of trying to figure out something that's already been figured out. But the personalization to individual is so key. I'll give you a couple scenarios and example. Um, Myself in my 40s with two kids, and the way I live, going back to the office, you know, 5 days a week is not the ideal situation. Being able to be home and take away commute time, and spend more of that time with my family is really awesome. But you may be in a situation, and I mentioned challenges before, one of them being technology. Or let's say I live in New York. A lot of folks who are early in their career in New York, you know, they have roommates, they have an apartment, and it's three, four of them that need to work, and they may not have enough individual comfortable space that everyone can work from home.
Yeah.
And so organizations have to think about the breadth of their employees and the needs, and that point that Carrie made about the customization and the personalization of work is really what the future of work is going to be about. And so while we don't have a ton of offices here at Automatic, we do have one office in New York, which was a legacy Tumblr office. We do create the opportunity for our employees, and Joel mentioned it in the last session, to go and work from a co-working space. Because we recognize that not everyone has the facilities they need at home to be able to operate at their best. And if they're not operating at their best, they're not going to deliver against the company's goals in the way we need to. So that investment in whether it's co-working space, technology, et cetera, is something that organizations are going to have to address and go find that budget, because that budget's going to come from you reducing your brick and mortar footprint, but increasing your footprint around, you know, being able to provide to employees the ergonomic space they need. Do they need a standing desk? Do they need a certain type of chair so they can sit at home and work for a few hours? Do they need co-working space? Do they need a greater travel budget? So when they do need to meet up with their fellow co-workers, they have a budget that they can meet in a mutual location and get work done and build the rapport that Rachel was talking about. That's so important, especially at the senior levels in an organization. You have to have rapport with your peers to be able to get things moving. So I wanted to put an emphasis in a couple of example scenarios on that point, because I think not enough companies and organizations are thinking about that. They're just saying, well, people liked working from home. Let's just do, and it may not be a fit for everyone. There are people who may want to be in an office 5 days a week for whatever reasons, and that has to be something that companies allow for also. Otherwise, they're going to lose out on good talent.
Yeah, 110%. What I wanna get into a little bit is understand a bit of some of the technologies that drive these efficiencies. Yeah, we understand some of the obvious ones like Zoom and Calendar, but Rachel, given your experience and role, um, can you maybe expand a bit on some of the technologies that drive some of the efficiencies that help make remote work a lot smoother that maybe some of us have not been considering?
Yeah, it's an interesting question you ask. I mean, being in the space that I'm in, I get to see quite a bit that's happening, that's evolving, right? And so we've talked about a few quite a bit throughout this conversation. Video conferencing is, sort of a no-brainer today. Without it, you basically cannot, operate, right, in a hybrid or a distributed world. Messaging platforms. Somebody mentioned Slack earlier. That's a pretty common platform. So fairly obvious. And then of course, file or document sharing and collaboration. So being able to asynchronously share, large amounts of information that then inform what you're going to build, for example, for an engineering team or a product team. These are fundamental, I think, I would say foundational structures that need to exist in a world where in the world that we live in today, right? Let's call it what it is. But beyond that, I think what we're really trying to do with in the technology space, I think, is really trying to mimic what we've lost, right, in IRL, in real life. And moving closer and closer to that is what I think technology companies are looking to try to do. So in the last 6 months or so, if you haven't heard the word metaverse, um, it's practically bringing our, I think, reality into a virtual world and giving us this ability to connect and work together in a way that we haven't been able to before. Sure, video conferencing gets us there to some extent, but imagine a world where you're essentially have an alternative reality where you can actually get things done. And so these are some of the things that I think are on the horizon, that could really actually amplify the type of impact that we're looking for in a hybrid environment. And then I think, of course, advancing some of the things that are near term would be improving some of the tools that we have. There are a bunch of whiteboarding tools that I've played around with that I really enjoy. um, AR, VR in and of itself is also something that I think we could leverage more of. And so there are things that I think there are opportunities piping up, that I think, with time we'll come to realize and become more part of our toolkit, if you will. But some of the things that clearly are already taking effect and have an impact on how we work together are some of the basic blocks that I mentioned earlier.
Yeah, yeah, agreed, wholeheartedly. Um, One important thing that I've come to experience with American-based companies that I'm not so sure exists within the region is the concept of employee resource groups, ERGs. Karen, given your experience, maybe you can comment on it a bit, because I'm not so familiar. And I think these employee resource groups creates a level of community that is really important for us to be able to as Cavell said, build that rapport with people. And these employee resource groups within physical context tend to meet up and have events together on a regular basis, and that really helps to drive both company culture and gives that sense of like unique identity, because you have like African employee resource groups and you have Caribbean employee resource groups, all sorts of things, right? And so now as we transition into this sort of like virtual space, is this something that this question directed to Karen, is this something that you see happening within our local or regional context? And how do you think we can, I guess, are you seeing them happening virtually as well? Like, are they happening? Do they happen physically with any physical context? And is it something that you think will happen or is happening virtually?
Okay. So Kyle, let me start with Trinidad and Unit Trust. So given the restrictions from a health and safety perspective, we know that gatherings have been discouraged.
Yeah.
So, companies like ours have been trying to find creative ways to replace that face-to-face physical human interaction that would take place in the office. So for example, this week Unit Trust had a virtual team event where we viewed a movie together. So you were told, come to your screen with your popcorn, and let's
Okay.
view let's view a movie together. Or
Yeah.
like when we have team meetings, we have a DJ after the meeting, and people stay on and vibe, and there's banter in the chat, and people are in front of their screens dancing. um, or utilizing different technology to encourage that interaction, that social interaction, not just for work. And I mean, it squarely faced us um, when we realized that we had employees who had joined during the pandemic who had never met another UTC employee face to face.
Wow.
And
Wow.
so
Wow.
and so the challenge was, how do we ensure that they're engaged, that they're connected, that they get a sense of the culture, that we create that sense of loyalty and identification that we're so proud of, that most UTC employees boast, when all your interaction is just in a meeting, very transactional, talking about deliverables and action items. So as I said, we've had to think about ways to really engage staff. So like we're in the throes of planning a virtual sports day. So
Really? Really? How is that gonna work? What sort of sports you're gonna have happening on your virtual sports day?
So there's some activities that you will have to do and have a witness, like time you.
Okay. Okay. All right. All right. All
And
right.
some things you might be able to do in front of a screen. So it's a mixture of things. As I said, just trying to figure out how to make people feel a part of the UTC family, being very family oriented in culture. And the same thing happens in other companies. So my peers that I've spoken to across various industries spoke about buddy systems being implemented in their company. So every month you have a new buddy, and you touch base with them to learn things about them, personally, not necessarily work related, just to get an understanding of who that person is. So giving each employee the opportunity to get to know another employee better, utilizing technology like Mentee. Obviously we would be familiar with like the breakout rooms on Zoom and so on. So it's definitely a time when we've had to put on our creative hats. While we look to maybe companies who have done it or are doing it before us, but the reality is most companies haven't had a lead time because we've only been in this pandemic about 2 years. So I think we're all learning and we're all sharing, and I think that's what we'll have to continue doing, sharing as we figure things out.
Yeah, agreed. And that's what this conversation really is about us creating those spaces, those platforms for us to share the learnings across each other, and not just within the region, the learnings that occur across our relationships globally. And that's why we're creating these spaces as Tech Beach, to give opportunities for these learnings to occur. And so on that same point of learnings, I think I want to transition into like that final notes of like saying, what are some of the top learnings that you think that employers, managers, and leaders of organizations really deeply need to consider as they grapple with how hybrid, on premises, or fully distributed need to be considered. I think we covered quite a few here today, but as we're coming to like a close of the session, like give me an understanding, I guess, of what are some of the top things that you really think definitely need to be considered. I know Carrie Ann mentioned definitely considerations as it relates to women, right, and how women are affected more, and so leaders need to really devise circumstance, I guess, scenarios that would allow to cater for these circumstances, right, or for these situations, right. Cavell mentioned things along the lines of internet and travel benefits and that sort of thing to consider in that way. And so give me some of what you believe are some of your top things that you're like, listen, if you're leading in this way, this is exactly what you need to do in order to try to make this work. And we know these things evolve over time because, as Karen just mentioned, we're only in this 2 years. Well, some of us. Some of us, right? So, Cavell, you can begin first.
Yeah, I mean, I think what I'm going to say is just more a summation of what has already been said. I think this question is to leaders. I think leaders still have to think about the same things that they think about in a general basis around how do they deliver on the success they need to deliver for the company? What are the business objectives? And so the lens is just changing to say, okay, how do we ensure that we have a continuity in delivering those business objectives in a way where employees' location is more distributed and what that means? And so the things that I would highlight that I think not enough people pay attention to as leaders is what is the communication strategy across different teams, right? The way, so I lead a number of organizations, but one of the teams I lead is sales. Sales has primarily been an in-person, go meet with the client, present to the client, show them the value proposition. What does that look like in a distributed world, and how do you solve for that? So that's one area. Second, if anyone here is in the, I know this is Tech Beach, but from a creative perspective, anything that is around the creative world, creatives have traditionally worked in a collaborative way where they're all in a room and they're riffing on ideas and putting it up on whiteboards and such. And so thinking about, the short answer is you're still thinking about the same things, but really making sure you're taking time as a leader to understand what are the differences that may exist in a distributed world. It's not about trying to recreate what was already there. It's understanding how we can work differently with a distributed workforce. And I think that's the mistake some people make, is they're trying to recreate the past. Instead of what's the example that a lot of people give? The first automobiles that were made, right, look more like the horse and carriage buggy design, because people were trying to just modernize a horse and carriage versus thinking the opportunity that it could create for a different design that was better. And so don't think about, hey, how do I replicate or do something I'm already doing? Think about the goals you need to achieve and how different that looks. And again, I'm going to plug this because I think business leaders need to pay attention. This stuff has already been figured out. It's not new for everyone. And again, Distributed is the name of the podcast. Matt Wonderleg, our founder, has plenty of episodes, and I guarantee you that, wherever you are in your distributed work transformation, there are going to be a significant amount of information there that can help you to accelerate. Again, it's the cheat codes. It's the solutions already exist, and you don't need to go reinvent the wheel when companies like mine have been doing it for 18 plus years and know how to do all of this in a way. And we're actually building solutions like our P2 asynchronous communication platform so that companies can replicate what we're doing in a faster manner.
Cavell, on that same point, man, are you guys offering consultancy? Because you've been doing this 18 years, so now you guys can start up a whole consultancy shop on distributed.
Real talk, I talked to Matt about it. I was like, hey, there's so many companies that don't understand how to do this well. Like, we could have a value proposition in doing some consulting. I mean, he's generous with his times, and he has, he's consulting by giving it away for free. Matt, the philosophy of Automattic is all about sort of, open source, and he's open sourcing with the podcast and saying, here's how we do it. Go do it. Like, just go do it. He's not, even charging for it. So just check out the podcast, and you'll get a lot of information about it if you're a business leader.
Yeah, definitely. And so as with all these things, like you get the sort of like the general info on the podcast, and even you get down to some of the details, right? Like they say, the devil is in the details. But when it comes to the implementation, there tends to be like a big gap between the what you listen to on the podcast and what you heard the professor say, and then what comes down in reality. And so, man, I would be excited to see a product or service develop out of this that really help people go from that conceptual idea that he has put forward, and then seeds they've embedded in people's minds to like how does this actually like come to life, which is not even something I considered before hearing you and this podcast. And so you go ahead and plug the podcast again. The podcast is distributed by
Matt Mullenweg.
Mullenweg, exactly.
And it's on almost every platform. If someone who's in the comments can type it in there, then folks can see it and get it. I don't think I can type in the comments.
No, yeah. So I'll drop the link in the comments, to the podcast itself, and drop it right here. All right. So perfect. All right. So rolling on to that sort of summation of so many things that need to be considered. I know Cavell didn't cover everything, so Rachel, tell me some of the things. I gave you some time to wrap in your mind some of the thoughts. So tell me what you think we should be considering.
Yeah, I mean, I think for employers, managers, leaders, I think, really, we've been saying this for years, but I think now more than ever, doubling down on actually focusing on enabling teams to achieve results. So we talk about, giving teams goals and letting them sort of drive that, in whatever way, shape, or form they plan. As long as they get their stuff done and we hit those goals, then technically we're in a good place. I think that ideology can be great, but I think in addition to that, giving teams or enabling them through whatever means you determine, you can enable teams to actually achieve these goals that you set, is particularly in a world where they're not in the same physical spaces. Is I think there's more thinking that can go into that, and so doubling down on what that looks like, as opposed to expecting people to sort of figure it out on their own, I think could be beneficial. Obviously, being outcome driven. I think Cavell mentioned that at the top of this conversation, and I completely agree. I think being having very clear goals that you're actually working towards, that everybody understands and can align to, is just critically important. I don't know how you do that without in the world that we live in today. And then I also think one other thing that, may not be popular is really engaging employees in the process of deciding how they're going to get their work done. I think every company profile is different. Sure, there are trends, there are patterns across, but I think as a leader within a particular company, really understanding what your employees need, by listening to them, engaging them in crafting the process of, figuring out how they work in a distributed world is really, really important. I think these times are just opportunities for every leader really to learn from their own. What works for company A may not work for company B, right? And so while I love the idea of listening to others' ideas, listening to your own people and really taking into account what they have, what the type of challenges that they're dealing with for the products that you're building or the service that you're providing to the world, is a critical ingredient to figuring out what works for you. Those are the three things for me that I think are important.
Yeah. Um, so, so Dr. Dr. Hepburn Malcolm.
Yes, sir. Mhm.
uh, within 1 minute as we're closing here, so we try to close on time. Yeah, if you can summarize.
All right, let me summarize in 1 minute with a 1 minute story.
Yeah.
One of the things that we realized, as I mentioned to you earlier, that Unit Trust was a very traditional company, very conservative, like most companies in the Caribbean. That's the reality, right? The closest thing we had to working remotely was you could work from another Unit Trust site, not your home, right?
Okay. Okay.
So when we were forced to have the majority of our staff work remotely, I think we all shocked ourselves because what happened in 2020 was we had one of the most profitable years. Our net sales grew by 997%. Is that a real number? Right?
What?
We did, yeah. So we did net
That sounds
sales.
like you could pay people more.
Yes, of course. We found other ways to compensate people for that kind of performance.
Yeah, of
We
course.
our net sales, we delivered 118 million US in sales, and our gross sales would have been multiples of that, like 5 times of that. And so
Wow.
I say all of that to say, you see the kind of performance that people were able to deliver when you just free them up. The companies don't like to hear that, they don't
Exactly.
like to hear that.
You
But
could write another book on this. This is crazy, a case study. Definitely, because those sort of results are not the results people expect. They would have expected a dip, all right? And definitely not an increase. And then such an increase. We're on like levels,
absolutely.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
so that 2020 was one of our best years to date in our 39-year history. And it was during, as I said, during a tough time and a time when people were actually allowed to work from home. So it shows that, even when we transition to a hybrid scenario or if people remain at home, I don't think it threatens productivity. So in a nutshell, I'm telling leaders and managers to approach work with a more open mind, like throw off the status quo and the old fogey thinking and just think about the possibilities of what could happen if we shake things up a little bit. So I hope I was under a minute.
No, yeah, you're on point. You're on point. You're on point in time and our story. And what I tell a lot of executive leaders, a lot of the times that we work with, is that we don't do a good enough job of telling these stories of the impact that we're having with our teams, with the work that we're having in society, with our employees, and that sort of thing. That story was perfect to close with. Like, I want to be able to take that experience and really blow it up and tell more people around the region about the impact that you're having by taking this sort of distributed teams, hybrid employee work, and letting them know that, listen, there's a way to maximize on this and do really well. You need to listen to that distributed podcast, and you need to work with UTC because they figured it out, right? So yeah. So in closing, I just want to thank each of you guys for your time. Cavell on the first session and on the second session here now, where we kind of just take a broader look at things. Rach and Carrie-Ann, thank you both for sharing your experiences. It was definitely very, very fruitful and really good to hear from both of you guys on your experiences individually, working on these sorts of teams. And I'm hopeful that we can continue to have this sort of discourse in the future, because this is something that we're all grappling with. Some more so than others, definitely. Okay, Cavell, you guys are in like a whole other category by yourself, all right? But the rest of the world, is trying to figure out how to do this. And definitely a lot of them probably aren't seeing the kind of results that you guys have seen in Unit Trust. So thank you again for your time. And in closing, thank you. That's it. All right. Thanks a lot. I want to thank the audience for being so engaging and so many questions and comments coming through. I want to just reiterate that you can still apply for the roles that are available with Automattic through our web link that was shared. I can just pull it back up here quickly again, as well as through the Automattic website. They have a recommendation form that says, hey, you came on to our interview and you heard through us, and so we'll get some of the credit for it. So either way, it's fine with us. Thank you again, and goodbye.